Hello, sweet friends. Today we are going to be making the Hawk Moth Blanket. So, this blanket is made up of granny squares and it's got three different shapes. So, I have a large granny square, which is 11 rows of color with a border. Each row has a black border. That black border is a join as you go row. So, the first thing you do is make your squares that are 11 rows of color. That is for your big squares. Then we have our small squares, and that is going to be 5 rows of color. And we have our rectangles that are also 5 rows of color. And I do have in the description each of these shapes and how many rows they get, along with mentioning that the border is with that. So I have that in the description for you to check out. And I also have the color list in the description. This is just my messy notes, so please don't mind that. But I do have this written in the description. This is the order of colors that I used. I am using the Big Twist value yarn in these colors. I have 15 of the small squares. I have 12 of the rectangles and 6 of the big squares. So I have all of those notes in the description, so you can check that out. And each one of these squares, I am going in order of color. So the first square, as an example, I started with the first square, I started with color 1. And then I did a row of color 2, a row of color 3, a row of color 4, and a row of color 5. So it is 5 colors, and I stayed in this color order for the entire blanket. So each one is in this order. Toffee's always going to be next to dark coral is always going to be next to mustard. So that is how I did this blanket. You can do it with whatever you would like. You don't need 10 colors like I did. You could do it with less colors and just switch the colors more often. You could do 5 colors and do, in the same idea, just rotate those 5 colors. So the way that I did that was I just went first square starts with a 1, second square starts with a 2, third square starts with a 3, and I just did that for 15 squares. So it ends up being that you have several duplicates in your amount of squares that you have. I did the exact same thing with the rectangles so that you start with your number. And what I did was I worked all the way through, and I had my last duplicate was starting with the color uh, number 5. So then I started my next s- rectangle with color number 6. So I just tried to stay kind of in that order as I went. But again, you don't need to do that. But that is how I did my color order so that you can follow that. This is the rough layout of the squares and rectangles and how they are laid out. I will put a diagram up on the screen that you can screenshot or you can pause so that you can reference this. And I also have it in a numbered so that you know which squares get attached in which order so that you can stay on track that way. For the yarn that I'm using Big Twist Value yarn, and I am going with the corresponding hook that it says on the label. It says to use a 5mm crochet hook, and I am using a 5mm crochet hook. And you can use whatever yarn you'd like. I know some people really like the natural fibers, so feel free to use whatever colors you prefer. I just am using the hook size that the label says to use on my skein of yarn. All of the colors that I am using and the order of the colors that I'm using is in the description, so you can go check that out if you would like to use the same colors that I have. Also, if you do not want to use the big twist yarn, which I believe is being sold at Hirschner's now since Joann's is closed, you can purchase it on Hirschner's. But if you do not want to buy or use the big twist value yarn, I have linked a website it's called Yarn Sub. So you can go in, type in the type of yarn that you want to substitute, and it gives you a list of similar yarn so that you can swap some different things out if you would like. So feel free to use those resources if you'd like. I've also listed the Hirschner's website on there if you want to check out their line of Big Twist. I believe they have all of the value colors that Joanne had. All right, so I just recorded this with my chocolate brown and I watched it back just to see if it was too dark, and it was. So I'm going to redo that with a lighter color so that you can see the definition of the stitches and what it is that I'm doing. But this square that I'm making does start with the chocolate brown. So you will see that later on when I'm attaching my next color. But for the beginning, I wanted to show you in a lighter color so you could see that. So I'm going to start with a magic ring, and that magic ring, I'm going to cross my yarn over my fingers like this and hold it tight and wrap it around my fingers twice and put my hook underneath the first two loops and grab that top loop that I just crossed over, pull it through. I'm going to do a little bit of a twist with my hook and then go and grab the yarn that I'm holding with my other two fingers and pull that through to make a chain. Right, and then I'm going to chain two more so that I have a total of 3 chains coming off of that magic ring. I'm going to double crochet 2 more and chain 2 for my corner, 3 double crochets in the magic ring, chain 2 for another corner, 3 double crochets in the magic ring, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets. All right, so I've got my 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to close my center here. So I'm going to pull on this tail and see what piece of yarn moves. All right, so I know that's the one that I need to grab and tighten the other loop, and then pull my tail and close that other one. All right, so you have a nice tight first row, and I have my chain 1 over here, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 that we started with. And then chain 1, and then at that point you will cut your yarn and just pull that tight and your first row is complete. All right, and for our second row, we are going to be using pale peach. So that is going to be the next color on our list of colors in the color order. So I'm going to get that one. I like to start with a standing double crochet, but if you don't want to do that, you can just attach your yarn and chain 3 for your first double crochet. Always remember to leave a long enough tail so that you can weave in your ends. And so in our corner, it doesn't matter what corner you start in, but I am going to start with a standing double crochet. And the way that I'm going to do that is I have my slip knot on my hook, and I'm going to wrap my yarn around once, and I just keep my finger here to keep the yarn secure because it will flip around if you let go. So I'm going to go into the corner, any corner space, and wrap my yarn around, pull up a loop, wrap around, go through two, wrap around, go through two. All right, so that is my standing double crochet. So I'm going to do two more doubles in this corner. And now I'm going to hop over to my next corner and do three double crochets. The only chains I'm doing are going to be the two chains in each corner. I know some people like to put a chain in between each cluster, but this one does not have any chains in between the clusters. All right, so chain two for your corner, three more double crochets in that same corner space. And then hopping over to the next corner, it's going to be the same thing. Three doubles, chain two, three doubles. Okay. And again in the corner, three doubles, chain two, three doubles. Okay, we've made it back to our first corner. So we are just going to work another three double crochets into that corner space to do the second side of our corner. I'm going to chain one and slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet that we made, that standing double. All right, so chain one and cut our yarn, and then pull that through, pull it tight. That is our second row. So our third row is going to be the color toffee, and we're starting that the same way. So I'm doing a slip knot and a standing double crochet in any corner. Put my yarn around, go into that corner, pull up a loop, wrap around, go through two, wrap around, go through two. That's my standing double crochet. I'm doing two more doubles in that same space to complete that side of my corner. Now I'm going to hop over to the next space here and do three double crochets in that space. Because this is really just a classic granny. Right? Hop over to the corner, three doubles, chain two, three doubles. And I finished my corner. I'm going to hop over to this next space, three doubles in that space. And then over to the next corner, three doubles, chain two, three doubles. Hopping over to the next space, three double crochets. and the corner, 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. And my next side, 3 double crochets, and going to my last corner, and I'm just going to finish this corner by putting 3 double crochets into that side. There's 3 doubles, chain 1, and slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet. Chain 1 and cut my yarn. And then I'm going to my next color. My next color is going to be dark coral. And I just want to show you this square real quick. So you can see each corner is always going to be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Each side is going to be 3 double crochets in a space, 3 double crochets in a space. Each row that grows, you are going to get another side space. So another space in between your two corner pieces. So this row we had one space in between our corners. This this row we have two spaces between our corners. The next row will be three spaces between our corners, and it just continues to grow that way. So your sides will grow, and that means you just have to do your 3 double crochets into each of the spaces on the side so that you continue to grow the square properly. All right, so again, I'm going to start in my corner with my standing double crochet. And that is 3 double crochets in the side of that square. I'm going to do 3 doubles in my next space. Okay, so I got my two side spaces and I'm working my next corner. That is 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Okay, and my 3 double crochets in each of these spaces. 3 in here. And then my next space is the corner. And the corner is 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. All right, now I have my fifth row, and I'm going to do the same thing with my standing double crochet and 3 doubles in the corner for my first side, and 3 double crochets in my next space. Do that all the way across that side. 3 double crochets into each space. And then my corner is just a 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, just like all the corners we've done. And then my next side is 3 doubles into each space. You see how that side is growing? Each side is growing. All right, I'm going to finish off this color and I'll meet back with you in just a second. All right, so I just completed my 5th row. So I just did a chain 1 at the end. I'm slip stitching into that first double crochet just like I have been doing and cutting my yarn. So for your 5 row squares, you are going to be done here, and then we will do the black joining row when you're ready to join your squares. So at this point you are done until you're ready to join your squares for your row of 5. If you're going to do your larger squares, then you are just going to do the same step until you have 11 rows. And you'll also have 11 clusters all the way across. So you've got your chain 2 corners over here, and in between you will have, like here I have 5 clusters and I have 5 rows. So that's an easy way to count it as well. You can also count your colors. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So for your 5 row squares, that's what you're going to do. And for your 11 row squares, you're just going to continue with the same steps, just continue going for 11 rows. All right, and now we're going to get started on our rectangle so you can see how to make that one. For your rectangle, we are going to start with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 22. And you want this chain a little bit on the snug side, but not too tight, because we don't want the center to be too tight that there's no stretch. But because we're working right into these chains, we want to make sure that they are not being pulled too wide because they're too loose. So make these chains a little bit on the tighter side. Okay, I have my 22 chains. And I'm going to be working into the 4th row, or I'm sorry, the 4th chain from my hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 chains, working in the 4th chain there. So I'm going to make 2 double crochets into that space. All right, and chaining 2 for the corner, and 3 more double crochets into that same chain that we just worked into. All right, then we're going to skip 2 chains and work 3 double crochets into that next chain. And again, we're skipping 2 and working into that next chain. Skip 2 chains, work 3 doubles into the next chain. Right, skip 2, work 3 doubles into the next. skip 2, work 3 doubles into the next. Skip 2 and work into the last chain with 3 double crochets. Okay, and chain 2, and that is your corner. So we're going to be working into the same chain space that we just worked into, putting another 3 doubles into that space. All right, just want to take a look. So this is what you should have right now. You've got your short side here, and you've got a short side here. You've got your 2 chain 2 spaces up in these corners, and you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chain 3 clusters across your long side. All right. Now we're going to work our last side. So we are going to chain 2 and do another 3 double crochets into that chain space that we just worked into. All right. And then on this side, we are going to be working into the same chains that we worked into for the cluster on the opposite side. So I'm just going to work 3 double crochets into that same space. This is why you want to make your chain, like your starting chain, a little bit on the snug side because you are working on both sides and in, several angles on these ends here. All right, so I did my 3 doubles there. I'm going to work across from my next one here in the same space as that one that rests right across. Okay, and then same for this one. 3 doubles into that chain space. Same for the next one. Same for the next. And then your last one is going into that first chain that you worked into. So you're doing 3 more double crochets into that space. And chain 1, slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 that you made for your first double. Okay, chain 1, clip your yarn long enough to tie in later. Pull that tight, and now you've got the first row of your rectangle. So you've got your all 4 of your corners that are chain 2 spaces. Got your 2 sides, your 2 short sides, and your 2 long sides. All right, now we're going to do our next color. That is going to be dark coral. And we are attaching the yarn the same way for the rectangle as we did for the square. So any corner that you want to work into, just going to do that standing double crochet into the corner, and we're going to do 2 more doubles. Each corner is exactly the same as the corners we made for the squares. So there's nothing different there. The only difference is the amount of clusters on each side, but the technique is exactly the same. And your structure is built for you here, so there's really no thinking. You just work into your spaces. Anytime there's a space, you're doing 3 double crochets into those spaces. So our next space, we're just working into that with 3 double crochets. The first row for the rectangle is the one that is a little bit harder. It's not hard. You just saw it. It was very easy. It's just making sure that you're counting your spaces and going in the right spots. And then once you have all that done and your count is correct, then the rest of the rows are very simple. And so we're just going to continue working our clusters into the spaces. And that's just 3 double crochets into each space. And then when you get to your corners, it's the same thing. It's just 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. All right, so there's my corner. I'm just going to do that, the 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. Okay, so this is the short side. I just want you to see what it is to look for. Okay, so you finished your corner, and then you're just going to hop over to the next corner over here. There. Same thing, 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. And then we're working our next long side, and we're just working into each of those spaces with our 3 double crochets in each space. So I've just completed my round except for this last side of this corner. So I just wanted to do that with you. I completed this corner and then I hopped over to the last corner, and I'm just going to do 3 double crochets. You chain 1 and you're going to slip stitch into that first double that we made. All right, chain 1 and cut your yarn. And we are going to start with our next color. And I'm going to do that the same way I've been doing it. So slip knot, standing double crochet in the corner, any corner you want. And 2 more double crochets in this corner. And we're just going to work our way around just like normal. So I just wanted to check in and show you the side of this rectangle. So I did my first, or I did my corner over here, and just remember to check that side for spaces because we've got a space there. Just make sure you don't hop over that one. So it's 3 doubles in that space there, and then working on our next corner. And then just working along the long side, and then do our corner and work the short side, which is just one cluster there. And I'll meet you back here at our last few stitches on the corner. All right, I'm at the end of this row. So I did my chain one, and now I'm going to slip stitch into my first double crochet, chain one, and cut my yarn, pull tight. That is my third row. Now I'm going to do my fourth row. That is going to be the olive color. I believe it's called olive drab. And starting exactly the same way, slip knot, standing double crochet in the corner, and working all the way across. And remember, you are going to have two spaces on your sides here. So it's going to be a cluster of 3 double crochets and a cluster of 3 double crochets. That is between your corner spaces. And we're at the end of our fourth row here. So I did a chain one, and I am going to slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet, cut my yarn, and just pull that tight. And you can see the sides grow. So we started with 7, 8, 9, 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 10 clusters there. And then we started over here with 1, and we have 2, and we have 3, and now we have 4. So then we're doing one more row. And for that row, I am going to be using the color cream. And that fifth row will be our last row for this rectangle. So again, start in any corner. And it's just the exact same instructions, just making sure that you work in all of those side spaces across the long and the short sides, making sure you don't miss those. And we are done with our last row. And I just did my chain one. I'm going to slip stitch into my first double crochet, cut my yarn, pull that tight. And then you will want to weave in your ends, but that is your 5 rows for your rectangle. And then you will set this aside for when you are ready to add this to your add this with your join as you go black row all the way around. So that is the next thing that I will share with you, is how to join all of our squares together and in what order and how we're going to structure that. Now we are at the point of being able to put these pieces together. And you can see I have done my black border all the way around the square. And the first square is the only one you're going to go all the way around to start. So this is all by itself. It is not attached to anything. And that is how you're going to start with your first square. Just do one more round of the black for the border. And then when we get to our second tile to attach it, we are going to be doing a join as you go. So I'm going to show you a little sheet that I have. I'm going to have this in the description so you can print this off if you would like. But these numbers are the order of how you're going to attach each tile to make the blanket because you can't go straight across because you see there's some uh, crossing over of things. It's not all one strip, so they're in a funny order. So how you're going to attach them, you're just going to follow numeric order. And how you're going to do that, this is number 1, so that's what I did here, and that is a border all the way around that one square. And then number 2, that's this one here. And what I did was I went around 3 sides, and I left the side that I'm going to be connecting with a join as you go, uh, unworked because I'm going to join it as I work this last row. And I'm just going to keep following the order of this. If you would like to just sew your panels together, or if you want to do a different joining method, you can do that. The only thing that's going to be different is when I put a border around the entire blanket, the count is going to be off a little bit. But the way that the join connects from this panel to this panel or this tile to this tile is not going to be as seamless when you're putting a border around the entire thing. So just keep that in mind if you're going to join a different way, but you're free to do whatever you want. I just want you to know that that is part of the border and it's going to be a little bit different if you do it differently. All right, so I'm going to show you how to join this. And also, I do have this in the description as well. It's just I have the color in order here, the colors that I used in order, and then each square. So this is the 5 round square, and I have how many that you make, and then you have the color order. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is caramel, teal, chocolate brown, pale peach, toffee. And then the next one you would do dark teal, chocolate, peach, toffee, dark coral, and it just continues going down that direction. The way that I did this was I just went in order of each time I put a tile together. So number 1 ended up being just uh, the first large square that I made, the 11 round square. So the first one that I made on this list, like number 1, was this one here. Number 2 was the first rectangle that I had on my list, so that would be this one. My first square, my first small square was the first one here. Second small square was the one here. So I just went in order. You can do whatever order you want, but that's how I structured mine. And I will have a picture showing the entire blanket laid out so that you can see all the tiles in the order that I have them. And as I have put them together, I've noticed that some of the squares, the smaller ones, sometimes they'll have a lot of the blues and the teals and browns together. And those are kind of clumped together in one section. And I'm fine with that. I like the way that it flowed like that, where I just put each tile in order. But if you want to mix it up, you can feel free to do it however you'd like. I'm just explaining the way that I did it. All right. And to attach this, I will flip it this way, and then I'm working across in a normal direction for me. And so I have finished this cluster. So that's the first half of this corner, and I chained 1. And now I'm going to attach with a slip stitch into this chain 2 space on the other tile. So I'm just going to go into this space there, wrap around my yarn, pull it through, and then also pull it through the loop on my hook. So just a slip stitch through that space. I know the yarn is black, so I'm hoping you can see some some of what I'm doing. Then I'm going to do the second part of this corner into this same space here. So just 3 double crochets. All right. And then same thing with this next space here. I'm going to go right into that space across from, hope you can see that, across from my space that I'm just making. So I'm going to go into that space, pull up the yarn, and slip stitch through that other stitch there. And then do my next 3 doubles into this next space. So you're doing this row exactly the way that you normally would, except in between each 3 double crochet cluster that we're doing a slip stitch into the opposite, or into the other tile across from us. So just in, pull up some yarn, pull it through the loop on the hook, and you can just give that a little tug because I tend to have my attachment there kind of loose on accident, so I need to make sure that I'm tightening that up as I go. And then 3 double crochets. I find that it's easiest to do this on a surface instead of like on my lap, but it can be done. I just find it a little bit easier. All right, so I'm slip stitching on that opposite tile there, pulling up a loop and pulling it through for a slip stitch. So it is just the same thing all the way across. Okay, I'm going to work the rest of this side and I'll meet back up with you at our corner. And I'm over here at the end of this row here, and I'm going to go into this corner like I have been for each of those spaces. Do the same thing with a slip stitch. And then I'm going to chain 1 and then slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet. And chain 1 and then clip my yarn, leaving a tail for weaving in the ends. Pull that tight. And that is how we are attaching the tiles. And then as we continue to do that, you're going to have these small squares when you're attaching them, and you're going to do the same thing where you will start on a side and go into each space. It's going to be a space there. and you will connect in the corner, you'll connect in this next space, you'll connect in the next space, and that is exactly the same way that you will do that. It will be you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clusters on this side, which will end up being 6. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those will all match up. And then your next tile that you have will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'll be another square like that. And again, you're going by that chart. And sometimes they crisscross or they overlap in different ways, but remember that your tiles that are the smaller ones or the 5 rows will match up halfway with your longer tiles or your larger tiles. And again, the same thing with like your long tiles. So this side matches the big tile, this side matches the small tile, and also this one would match halfway, like half of this one. So same idea with this. So it would match halfway because this would end up being 6 clusters here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters, and that would match up. And then you could put another tile there. So it's going to be another 6. I hope that's making sense, but it's just go in order of this and you will not have any problems. All right, so you are just going to continue with this same joining idea, just following this order. And here's a little example of how you would join those smaller squares into a larger square. So like I was saying, 6 of these clusters is half of your larger square, or the large side of your rectangles. So for where I'm at on my chart, I am here on number 26. So I have 20, that is this one, and 26 is the one I'm going to be joining. And what I typically like to do, and you don't need to do this, but what I find the easiest is I do all the way around my square and I leave the joining side as the last one, because otherwise if you do it first, then you're joining your square and then you're trying to work all the way around, and I just find like that it's awkward and that you need to move the entire blanket around to get that side done or get the rest of the sides done on your square. So that's why I leave the joining side as the last side. All right, so this is a good example of starting in the center here. So I know I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So is I know that this is my space that I'm going to be working in. So I'm going to grab that yarn, slip it through. So we have joined, and then make sure that you don't forget your other corner side here. I'm going to work this other side of my corner with 3 double crochets into the corner space, and then working on the corresponding space across. Gonna go into that space, pull up a loop, pull it through for your slip stitch. 3 double crochets in this next space, slip stitch into the next space on the opposite tile, three double crochets. Oh, look at here. I did 2 doubles instead of 3 doubles here. And am I going to fix it? No, because we're going to embrace those happy little accidents. So I'm going to slip stitch into my next space and 3 double crochets into my next. Slip stitch across, 3 doubles, slip stitch across, and 3 doubles, finishing that corner. And then I'm going to slip stitch into that corner across from me and chain 1, slip stitch into the. And with these squares that have 2 sides that you are connecting, I like to work the 2 sides and leave the 2 join sides unworked until I'm ready to work them. All right, so you're going to join in your corner like normal and working across this side is just like you would normally do. So you're going to work your 3 double crochets to finish your corner, slip stitch into the opposite space, same thing. So you're going to work all the way across this side. And I'm going to show you what joining at the corner looks like. All right, working my corner now. Okay, so then I am going to work into that same space that this square is attached to. So I'm just going to slip stitch right into that one and then work the other side of my square. And this is why I like to leave the joining sides as the last sides to work, because then you have to maneuver in weird directions to attach everything or flip your blanket all the way around to get the right angle. Okay, and then you're just going to join this side as usual, and then you're going to finish off in your corner just like you would normally do that, or you will slip stitch into the first double crochet that you made and tie off. So that's how you join one that has 2 sides to join. Then I'm going to show you how to do this bottom section here with the long piece, the long rectangle, so that you can see what it looks like to join in the corners over here. So it's like the opposite side like this when you're joining a long side to two small sides. I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. And just so you know, another thing that I like to do, like for an example, where all 4 of these corners meet up, what I typically do is I will do, like for this 22 square, when I get to this corner, I'm going to attach the corner to the 16 corner. and instead of joining it to the 17 or the 21, because I found that that leaves less of a gap in between the corner joins. And just the same with 21, when I get to this corner here, I'm going to join it to 17 instead of 16. And that way you have a nice crisscross of joins, and it's a more secure, less hole spaces in that corner join for you. So just keep that in mind when you are joining several into corners there. All right, I'm going to finish this and then I will show you what it looks like to join a rectangle across this side. All right, and joining this side here, it's just going to be like normal for the start. Just going to join that corner, join with your 3 double crochets here, and just keep joining all the way across the side till you get to this corner, and then I'll show you how I attach at this corner. Now I'm at the spot where these two join together and the seam that you have there. Hide my tails. All right, so you can see when you pull this apart, you see that space there. And see this space in between. So you've got our two corner spaces here. And then you see that third space that is between these two clusters. And that is where you're going to join this two. So you're going to go right in between there. So just like usual, just going right in between those two clusters. So you see the corner space down here, corner space down here, and then we've got that space in between those clusters. And just do your slip stitch like normal. And then you just continue on to your next space on this side. And then just continue going into the next space on the opposite side. And just like that. And you are good to go. That should be all the different types of joins that you'll come across for assembling the tiles. But if for some reason you have something that comes up that's different, I can't think of anything that's different for this, but if you do, just do your best to find the space straight up right across from where your space is. So you can see that that centered it very well right there. All right, so that is the assembly for this blanket, and I will be back with you when we are ready to do the border. When you are ready for your border, you are going to start in any corner, and you're going to start the way that you have for every single row. So I'm going to start with a standing double crochet in this corner and just do a regular cluster that we have been doing. So it's just 3 double crochets, and it's this all the way around for your border. I'm choosing black to go for this first row because in between each tile, you have 2 rows of black here. So I just want the outside edge to match that. So I'm going to go all the way around this, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do for the seams when we hit those. So just work it like usual, and I'll meet with you for instructions on this part right here. Once you get to your seam, you are just going to be working right in between these clusters. You see that space right there? So you've got your two corners right here. Those are your two corners. And then you've got your seam right there. So between your clusters. And that right there is where we're going to be working our next 3 double crochets. And then you're just going to continue going along as usual. And that is the only extra instruction that you need for this border row because everything else is exactly the same. You're just working in between each of those clusters in the spaces between all of those clusters. And the corners are still going to be the 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and everything else is the same. That little spot for the seam is the only extra step that you needed for this border. And then I am also going to start adding other colors along with it. I'm going to do um, whatever colors that I have the most of, because there's some that I had less of than others. So I'm going to just see what colors I have left and I have the most of. And those I'm going to alternate with that color and black until I get the amount of rows that I want for the border. And then I believe I'm going to add an extra little detail to the last row. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to check it out and see what it looks like. And I will give you instructions on how to do that if I do add something extra. And I am finished with the main portion of my border, and I am going to add a scalloped edge here. So what you want to make sure that you have is an odd number of spaces on your last row, because that will help with spacing out the scalloped edge properly. So I needed 8 rows. So this first black row here was just the edging for this tile. So then I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows. So I did a second row on the end here to make sure that I had all of those spaces that ended up being an odd number of spaces from edge to edge. So now the first step for this scallop border, and obviously if you want to leave it as is, you could be finished here. You could have been finished back here or done 1 or 2 rows, whatever you would like. So if you do not want to go the 8 rows, but you still want to do the scalloped border, just make sure that you have those odd number of spaces on your last row. So you could do it shorter or larger, whatever you would like. So you're going to chain 1, and then in the next space, you can see right here that we are going to be working 7 double crochets, and we are only working in these spaces all the way across. So we've got our chain 1, and now I'm going to do 7 double crochets into this next space. After those 7 double crochets, we are going to slip stitch into the next space. So slip stitch, and that is your first scallop for the border. And we are just going to repeat that all the way across. So it's going to be 7 doubles, slip stitch, 7 doubles, slip stitch all the way across. And your last stitch should be a slip stitch in the corner space on that other end. So I will meet you there, and I'll show you how to turn the corner. So we have completed this side, and I have just slip stitched into this corner space here, right there. And now you're simply going to continue doing the exact same thing over to this next space. So you have your slip stitch here, and you're just going to do your 7 double crochets into this next space. And you're just carrying on the same alternating slip stitch and 7 double crochets. 3, and then slip stitch into the next space. So your corner will end up looking like that. So you got your slip stitch, your 7 double crochets, slip stitch into the corner, 7 double crochets into the next space, slip stitch into the next, 7 doubles in the next, and so on. So that is how you're going to do your corners. And that is all the instruction that you need for this blanket. You're just going to slip stitch into the first chain that you made at the very beginning of this row and tie it off, weave in all your ends, and you are completely done with the Hawk Moth blanket. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that you enjoy this blanket and that it is a lot of fun for you. I know that it was so much fun for me. If you have not already given this video a thumbs up, I would love it if you would do that. And also, if you have not subscribed, if you hit that subscribe button and the bell, you will get notified when I post new videos, and that would help me out so much for you to do so. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope you find joy in all the little things.